Okay, so we'll set our motivation. Again, remembering that motivation precedes and accompanies every single mental activity. It's just we're not aware of it. And typically motivation is something for me. I want to feel better. There's nothing wrong with that. Everyone wants to feel better or feel good. It's just that when it's limited to that, and when the good is limited to a very short-term good, then we don't think that that's so highly worthwhile. So there are higher states of consciousness, higher states of being that we have potential to achieve, and they're lasting. This is something that takes some study to be convinced about and understand, so that's okay. But just on the basis of some kind of faith that's maybe leaning towards belief, doesn't have to be fully believing, that there are higher ways and qualities of being that we can achieve. So that happens through creating the causes, and the causes are created through motivation and intention, mostly. So we dedicate or not dedicate, but motivate in a way that the results of these karmic imprints, these causes we create together for the next hour, hour and a half, will ripen in a way that is of the greatest benefit to ourselves, which is the full awakening mind, attaining the full awakening mind, and then for the greatest benefit of others to attain the full awakening mind, so we can be of utmost skillful service and help to others, whether it's they need food or spiritual realizations and teachings, whichever level they're at. We meet them on their level and able to be skillfully effective. Okay, so why don't we start just to clear anything that needs good to clear up from last week? Things that you had questions or things needing clarity, or do you think maybe other people might need clarity about? You know, it'd be good, Shayla. I was thinking that if people who download the teaching and watch it, I wonder that they had a facility to enter questions themselves. I guess we don't really have that ability, do we?
We don't. Some courses, Venerable Dundrup does, 2 days later, he does kind of like he facilitates a class, but yeah, and he can answer any questions that are needed.
Yeah, I guess there's probably a way to do it, but I don't know how right at the moment. I mean, unless you had your email address at the bottom, people could, because that would be quite a nice service for people, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, but any student can find your email address.
Right.
So at tnlsf.org, and then go to the teacher page.
Okay.
Find your picture and your email is there, so they can communicate with you. So yeah, if anybody has any questions.
Okay, Barbara, thank you. And Barbara, how are you doing? Anything resonate or confusion or doubts?
No, I'm doing fine. I feel like maybe this particular course is a little bit down the road for me, since I'm still fairly new. So I feel kind of like I'm auditing it, so to speak.
Sure.
And I'm getting a lot out of it. I enjoy your teachings, and this is good.
Good.
Good for me.
Yeah, I think I understand that, and I think you're not alone in that. You know, I think there are many people who will be yeah, you know, so I mean, this is part of the class. I mean, to understand that this topic, it is really for the Buddhist, if you know what I mean. It does, whether we label it the Buddhist but it means someone who is more familiar with and getting more engaged and more involved in these ideas. So it is that way. And The reason I am presenting it in a slightly different format than the traditional format, and also we will deal with the traditional format too, because if I had just gone in with the traditional format, it's exclusively for Buddhists. This is no doubt Tibetan Buddhists, I should say, even maybe not just Tibetan Buddhists, but it is so in that way this topic is an advanced topic, because some of the teachings in our modules, you could say that a non-Buddhist could easily segue into those teachings, don't you think, Shayla? That some of the topics are that way. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. But this one, I would say that this is not the case. This is a class, a topic that that expects the person to already know and have certain assumptions met, assumptions around believing in first of all, believing in the spiritual path. And then secondly, the spiritual path as outlined by the Buddhist tradition. Also, as I mentioned in an earlier class, in Tibet, or amongst traditional, at least Mahayana Buddhists, or probably Buddhist countries, this topic is there's no doubt around it, right? It's just people are wanting to learn more of the details about the practice of guru devotion or guru yoga. So it's not a question about a guru, right? They already accept the guru is an integral part of their spiritual practice. Depending on the tradition, now we have, in terms of the Theravada or the Hinayana tradition, the fundamental path, they do have slightly different, and put differently. In the Mahayana path, the practice of guru yoga is much more essential. In my understanding, in terms of the fundamental path, the Theravada path, the practice of guru yoga does not go to the level that we're going to talk about today. So their relationship with the guru is going to fall in probably one of those 5 categories I talked about already. And I don't want to make a hard, firm, line in the sand that that's exactly how it is. It's just maybe best to say it tends to be how the trend is, overall trend for the Theravada. Remember, the fundamentalist schools are located in places like Sri Lanka and Thailand and Burma. And then the Mahayana tradition is, places like China and Japan, Tibet, Cambodia, Vietnam. Actually, Mahayana schools. Okay, so that's just like the traditions. The traditions they follow they have great respect for the teacher, but it's not the same practice as we have in these last 3 that I'm going to talk about today. Okay. Okay, let me just give oh, I forgot something. Okay, I have to get the share function.
I just realized. Sorry.
That's okay. 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 It's always hard to find. It's really weird, this share page, because it doesn't. Okay, it's not there. Oh, there it is. It's like it's so lost in there. I have too many things open, I guess. Okay. So there we go. Okay. I just want to quickly look at this. Okay. So we talked about Buddhist professors, and any teacher, not any, but you could have a very, your own, Tantric Master could be functioning as a Buddhist professor for some people. Okay, so just so we know, it's not exactly the person, it's more how they are functioning. It can be the person too, of course. And so remember we covered Buddhist professors, Dharma instructors, and the meditation or ritual trainers, spiritual mentors, refuge or vow preceptors. And just to clarify for the number 5, because this is a, well, maybe it's like in the Catholic or tradition where, someone is getting baptized, that would be similar to a refuge or vow preceptor, or someone getting, the bar mitzvah for the rabbi who's performing the bar mitzvah. So that maybe that's kind of akin to what a refuge or vow preceptor would be. So in the Buddhist tradition, we have different levels of commitment. And the very first level of commitment that defines that you're making a claim or you're making a commitment to being Buddhist, you're going to take the refuge vow. Okay. And that comes with certain precepts and guidelines of its own. And then, so someone can give you that refuge, you can take that refuge vow, and in that person who gives it to you might only be that person. It might be in a teaching that they're giving, or someone is giving that ceremony. I remember at Cayton, the monastery where I lived, that there'd be a special day at the end of the November meditation course. It would say, anyone who wants to take refuge, tomorrow refuge will be offered. And it could be any number of people might offer that. Might be Lama Yeshe, might be Lama Zopa, it might be a senior monk or Lama. It might even be the student who's been leading the course. It can be, that's a ceremony or a commitment that can be given by different people. But anyway, that person you receive it from is your refuge preceptor. And then if you're a lay person, you may want to commit to taking the lay vows. Lay vows for layperson number 5. Generally speaking, you can take any or all of the 5, depending on the teacher who's offering it. But generally speaking, I don't think I've ever heard where you have to, well, I shouldn't say that. Could happen where the teacher may demand that layperson take all 5. But I don't hear that too often. So the lay vows, just to repeat them. So the refuge vows, where you're taking refuge that you're going to commit to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha as your source of refuge or source of reliance. It's a better way, reliance. You're going to rely on them. So we talked about, like last week, when people are afraid or in danger or kind of in a crisis or a trauma, their minds spontaneously start taking refuge. And depending on our training, some people just naturally take refuge to God, right? They just start praying to God, and that's probably through training, in our cultural training. Just because at a certain point we're totally helpless to have control, and we're in a great state of turmoil, whether it's a friend is in trouble or a child or whatever. When we're out of control, we've totally lost control, and power, is when people start taking refuge in something else. Now, you can take refuge in science. You can take refuge in medicine, right? So if we're diagnosed with a disease or a sickness or cancer or something like that, where does your mind go? Where do you go? Because, you're feeling out of control. You're feeling helpless. You're feeling totally isolated on your own, right? And scared. So when you feel scared, what do you rely on? It's really so fascinating. So I know even amongst myself and Buddhist friends, when I'm scared, I'm probably, let's say I get a diagnosis of a disease or cancer or something like that. Something that seems, something that seems, beyond my control and understanding. So it could be like a diagnosis of a disease, something like that, or in a war zone, any of those kinds of things, those traumatic events. Where does your mind go spontaneously? That's where you can think about what your refuge is, what your reliance is. Okay. So number 5 on the refuge or vow preceptor. So for those of us who have now formally taken refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, which I'll explain in a second, those have slightly wider interpretations and they might sound, but when you're in great need, like, all of a sudden you found out that most of your savings are gone, so something happened and you get really scared. What do you rely on then? So most will might rely on a lawyer, might rely on the courts, right? Might rely on the law of the land, right? So, or people might rely on God, if that's their training in terms of scary news around an illness or something like that. It's really, those are the times that really test us, because those are our natural reliances or natural refuge. And you start praying to God really intensely. So when we decide to make the commitment to have reliance on refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, then the mind will, instead of relying on the doctors, okay, as the refuge, you're relying on the omniscient mind, your own Buddha potential as well. You're relying on the spiritual path, which is the Dharma, and those sets of teachings and understandings, those explanations, those philosophies. And you're relying on spiritual beings to assist you. Then you go to the doctor, if you know what I mean. Then you rely, then you go to the doctor, and you rely on the doctor. It's not like certain I don't know, religions or cults that say, won't go to doctors or anything like that, can just leave it up to God. It's not like that. One could do that, but that's not what it means. This is reliance, refuge with knowledge and understanding and wisdom. Okay. So it's not to go to extreme, like, okay, I don't need to, I don't need to do anything about that infection in my foot. I'll just rely and take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Okay. Not so smart, because you may not have the karma for them to help you. It's possible, if you have the karma, to do that. It's possible, nothing's impossible, right? But better you cover your bases and take refuge and then go to the doctor, take antibiotics. Okay, so some people go very extreme. I've seen it. And they shun, conventional wisdom. So that's not the meaning of refuge. Again, for very higher levels, developing your refuge, yes, you can do that, actually. You can do that. And what it really means, so this is a different class, the refuge class, but what it means is really understanding and studying more about this idea of Buddhahood, awakened mind, understanding more about what it means, these teachings, these instructions, this philosophy and practice, and then understanding who are the beings that are sort of affiliated or connected with the Sangha, and what that means by Sangha. Okay, so that's where we are about those first five. Now, the last three we'll cover today, and let's take a look. Did we go to Mahayana Masters? I can't remember. Anybody know?
No.
No, I didn't think so. Good. Okay. Okay. Okay, so Mahayana Masters. So remember, we're dividing, or we understand that there's two sort of paths or vehicles within Buddhism, kind of like Christianity's Catholicism and Protestant approach, something like that, maybe. So the two vehicles or two paths within Buddhism are not in conflict with each other. What it is actually is that they lend themselves to the personality and mentality of the practitioner. So it's not a one size fits all. And it's interesting when you look at fundamental teachings in certain religions, like people's belief around the Bible, and they take it literal as one size fits all. And in Buddhism, it is not one size fits all. There are fundamental beliefs and teachings that are adhered by every Buddhist follower. Otherwise, we couldn't. Otherwise, be just a mess. So there are certain fundamental and important principles and teachings that make something Buddhist, of course. So in the Mahayana tradition, or the Great Vehicle, what really defines the great vehicles is the intent of the bodhisattva, or the motivation of the practitioner to develop bodhicitta. In the bodhicitta, we're talking about this bodhi meaning awakening, and chitta really means mind, or the awakening mind. So this is a quality of mind that we don't have developed in us at the moment. And I really stress when I teach on this bodhicitta topic, whenever I have to or speak on it, is that us in the West, well, I don't know if it's only us in the West, but when we hear bodhicitta, and those of us who studied it a little bit, we get kind of, we think of it as an emotional commitment. And what I'd like to just really impart to people is that bodhicitta is a mental factor. It's a mind, it's a mental, it's the same as when you feel, I don't know, when you're feeling really hungry and you can't think of anything else, and your mind is obsessed with hunger, right? And someone tells you, okay, well, let's do a meditation now, and you're thinking, oh God, I'm so hungry, I don't think I can sit for a half hour, right? That's a mental state, isn't it? That's a mental state. So I really want to stress that bodhicitta is not this emotional thought that I want to enlighten all living beings. It's not that. But if you were to put it into words, you'd put it into those words. So in the same way, we don't need any teaching or prompt to think of ourselves. It's natural, isn't it? It's just natural. If you feel a little bit of hunger or thirst, you just get up and go get something to drink, or you look for something to drink, don't you? You don't have to motivate for it in the broad sense of the word motivation. You don't have to motivate. You don't have to think, oh yeah, I need to take care of myself. I need to get some water because my mouth. We don't go through that, do we? It's a spontaneous default mentality, isn't it? So according to the Buddhist Mahayana teachings, our default mentality is for ourselves. Extremely important to understand this. That's just the default. It is, it's just natural. Even when we sleep, there's a thought of grasping onto myself. Okay, it's been there forever, since beginning of this time. It will not be there forever, because the spiritual path, the Buddhist spiritual path, is about seeing that this idea of the self-importance or self-focus is the root of problems. The root of problems is, I guess, a little deeper, but this self-focus, if there were no self-focus, there would be no problems. Because we have to look at the equation. The equations, I have a problem, right? Whether it's thirst, or the cloth on your chair that's torn that you have to repair, or that no one's calling you, you're feeling isolated, or that your business deals are falling through, or the stock market is not doing well, so your net worth is going down. I can afford stuff. Can't get your car fixed because your paycheck is late. So that's all. That doesn't need any rehearsal. That's just all so those are problems, right? Those are problems. Typically, we're going to call them problems. You're cooking something and you go to reach for the salt and you realize you'd forgotten that you'd run out of salt or seasoning. Yeah, so that's a problem in a sense. Now I realize it's not a life and death problem, but it's a disturbance. And any disturbance is what we refer to as a problem, disturbing the mind. Now the mind can be disturbed also through over pleasure, by too much pleasure. The mind gets disturbed also, and it feels good, but it is a disturbing in the mind in actuality. So the idea that the root of the problem is this self-focus, and we don't need any, prompt. When we're sitting here right now together, the self-focus is going to come up a number of different ways. We might come up that we're getting a bit stiff in our chair or sitting down. It may be that you're getting tired. It may be that you're getting hungry, and maybe we need a break. And maybe I don't understand what the heck he's saying, or I understand what he's saying. Why is he going on so long? Though that's what we're talking about. We don't need any help in the self in having a problem or disturbance. Now, where we go with Buddhist thought in the Mahayana as well, but also in the Theravada and the Hinayana, is that the normal conventional worldly approach to these problems is trying to constantly patch them. So the problem of no salt in the food, no seasoning, is to run to the store if we can, okay? And if we can't because it's gotten too late or too far away, then we look at some other way to solve the quote unquote the problem. We might eventually go, oh, okay, just forget it. I'll just put some ketchup on it or something, But it's the same mindset, you see. It's the same mindset. So you're trying to take care of the problem that's out there. The underseasoned food, the torn chair, the phone, no one texting you, the phone not ringing, people not sending any emails. So from the Buddhist psychology is stop focusing on the patches. Okay. Stop focusing on the fixes because they're endless. Doesn't mean you don't do the fixes. Doesn't mean you find some extra salt. It's talking about stop focusing on the fixes to pacify your mind. Because really, when we're looking for the salt and a substitute and ketchup, we're trying to actually pacify a mind that's not pacified, right? If it was pacified, I wouldn't care if there was salt or no salt. Right? So it's this desire that's a problem. And the desire is always arising from the self-focus. I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this, or I want this, I want this, I want this. So both in the Buddhist traditions, they both recognize that as the problem. But the way to subdue that or overcome that problem is different according to the two traditions, somewhat different. Okay. So in the Mahayana approach, both approaches look at the wisdom, or the antidote is wisdom, or understanding the nature of that self, that it is really the source of the problem, not the lack of salt, not that people aren't texting you or calling you. That is not the problem, but we think it is. So we send a text to a friend and we know she's home or something, and then they don't text back, or they do text back, and the problem's taken care of, right? So that's being hypnotized and tricked into thinking the problem is out there. But what about if you didn't have a sense of loneliness? What if you didn't have, what if we didn't have that, I need this, I need someone to relate to me? Then wouldn't the problem be solved too? Right?
Yep. Yes.
That's the approach. Then that's the flip on the Buddhist versus the conventional worldly normal approach that we've had since beginningless time. So in the Mahayana strategy to that problem or that dilemma is for sure attain awakening, but with the focus, because we could focus on attaining awakening or enlightenment and actually be tricked into just focusing more and more on ourselves. Okay. Of course, that's the job of our spiritual guide, is he or she is going to help us, through that. But it's not a guarantee that it'll be done quickly. So with the Mahayana Buddhist formula, it is, so the idea, if I attain awakening for the benefit of all other beings, so other beings are your focus, not you. It's weird. Yes, you do attain enlightenment, but it's not, I need to attain that, I need to attain that, I need to attain that, I need to develop single point of concentration, I need to develop single point of concentration, I need to develop understanding of wisdom and emptiness, I need to understand wisdom. Oh, I need to develop bodhicitta, I need more teachings, I need more teachings for this and that, because I'm such a mess. I got to get myself out of this mess. Yeah, we do. But the motivation has to shift. The focus has to slowly shift to the welfare of others. Because you know what happens when we get more and more focus on our enlightenment, our well-being? It just sounds just like what's happening in at least the States now, which is, taking care of me. Self-compassion, self-love, and self-care, and self-worth. And I mean, eventually it's also self. It's just the opposite. It's overly focused on self, which makes it bigger. And it's actually the same formula that's gotten us into trouble. Right? So be very careful when we start talking about self-compassion. There's a place for it. But most people, no, I shouldn't say that. I can't judge most people, but it seems that it just becomes another metaphor for self-me, I know that's critical, isn't it? So in the Mahayana Master, so you see, this is a teacher that is going to have an understanding and intent on the teachings of compassion and bodhicitta. And he or she is leading their students, their disciples, to develop aspiring bodhicitta and then take the vows. And they're able to guide disciples along the complete path to enlightenment, not just a particular training, a particular meditation, a particular ritual that you want to develop. Those we talked about are the first 5. But this, and when we're kind of making a leap here. The Mahayana Master is capable, or at least focused on the complete path to enlightenment. So there's a lot of demands on this person of qualities that he or she needs to possess that don't fall in the qualities of the ritual master. And a ritual master is someone who needs to know that ritual really well if they're going to teach you, or a meditation master, that they know that meditation practice really well and they can teach you, right? But then teaching you a meditation practice, teaching you a profound ritual, teaching you a discourse or giving a discourse on a Buddhist topic does not necessarily include this ability to guide us through the complete path to enlightenment. Finding that person, by the way, extremely rare. Okay, so the bodhicitta motivation falls into 2 categories, which is aspiring bodhicitta and engaging. Now, inspiring means I really want to develop bodhicitta. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, bodhicitta is actually not an emotional or philosophical idea. It's a state of mind, complete state of mind. When I see Lama's Rinpoche, and if you say to him, "Oh, Rinpoche, you need to take rest," he can't do that. I mean, and when I say he can't do it, as I've told in many classes, Lama's Rinpoche, very high level, maybe he's a Buddha, but very high level Bodhisattva, completely, my belief, completely captured by the Bodhicitta motivation. That's his mindset. He doesn't seem to have an I mindset. He only seems to have an other mindset. So it's just like asking a little kid, you don't need that piece of candy, right? Give it to everybody else. It's like not natural, right? I mean, I say not natural. Of course, kids have compassion and generosity. I don't mean like that. But the thought, not myself, but others, is not spontaneous, right? And of course, we see beautiful kids. I mean, kids have many levels of compassion and not compassion. I think naturally children are compassionate, but not to get in a debate about that. More debate about the psychology. You really, really pay attention. What is the focus of a person, of all of our friends, and all of the people we see on the street, and even the insects? that we can only make assumptions about the insects. But I mean, the insects can be cooperative, right? But as soon as you threaten them, they get scared, they run away, they try to protect themselves. The same thing we do. So for Lama Zopa, my experience is that he doesn't have that. It's really kind of bizarre. I would say that his Holy Style Lama is the same. There's a number of great beings that have that, but there's not so many, but there are a number that we can get examples from, get inspired from. I've mentioned many times how Lama Zopa Rinpoche once, when he was still pretty young, I mean, he was in his 20s, deep meditation, deep development of his practice and his realizations. And he just could find no reason to eat food. He stopped eating. Because if you think about it, why do we eat? First of all, we enjoy it. Is that first of all? Maybe first of all, we have to survive. Then we enjoy it, right? The survival thing is, so if it was just survival, why do we need to eat? Why don't we just eat the same thing all the time, right? It's because then we add this enjoyment thing on top and pleasure on top of it. And so that's all about I like it. I feel good. I want this. I want to feel better. My mouth is a little bit salty from that pasta. So now I need some ice cream. It needs a little sweetness and a little coldness. You know what I mean? That's all I. That's all I. So if you don't have the I, how do you eat? So he completely quit eating. And even his guru, Lama Yeshe, couldn't get him to eat. So they wrote a letter to Lama Zopa Rinpoche's root guru in Dharamsala, Trijang Rinpoche. I believe this is the correct story. I might have a few details wrong. And Trijang Rinpoche wrote back saying, you need to start eating for the benefit of others, because otherwise you die, and how are you going to help anybody? Okay, then he started eating. He could eat for Bodhichitta. He could eat for others. He could not eat for himself. That didn't even exist anymore. Sleep is the same thing. Exactly the same. I think that's why he doesn't sleep anymore either. Why sleep if it's not beneficial to others? It's not, as we say, it's not as in his DNA anymore. So that's the level that we're talking about. That's the kind of thing we can attain. That we can attain that. And that is the second one of engaging bodhicitta. His mind is totally engaged in bodhicitta. No thought of it. For us, hopefully we have aspiring bodhicitta, which means when we eat or we go through our day, as we get more and more mindful, we might have the prayer or the thought that I really want this to be a benefit to all sentient beings. Wow, that would be great. That's the aspiring bodhicitta. And that aspiring bodhicitta does evolve and develop into the engaging bodhicitta, or it's a complete mind that's possessed by the welfare of others. It's like you walk down the street, just walking down the street or driving down the road. And, when we're driving, typically the focus, if you really analyze, is on ourself, isn't it? I have to watch that car. I have to watch this. I have to, it's not conscious like that. But when the bodhicitta is increasing, there's this thought of others, not even, there is the thought, I got to protect that person, so I don't want to hit him with my car. There is that, but it's deeper. This aspiring bodhicitta and the engaging bodhicitta are actually focusing on their enlightenment. And so their enlightenment might be a simple thing like, because if we're Buddhas, we understand the best thing to do for their enlightenment. And the best thing we can do for enlightenment in that moment is, you drive by and I'm saying you as a wise being, have great, you have a whole level of sensitivity and awareness and warmth and affection and wisdom, and clairvoyance, all these things. So you might look over and just wave to the person, but that wave from you as a bodhisattva or a Buddha bodhisattva has different effects than if I wave to them. You know what I mean? That's the power of this practice. That's the power of this path, I should say. It's a quality of your being that will affect people's enlightenment. It's like when you go to the Thanksgiving dinner, no one wants to sit next to Uncle Norm, right? Because Uncle Norm's all grumpy and curmudgeon-y. He just wants to care about himself. Denise, do you remember my Uncle Norm stories? So we used to go over, Thanksgiving was at Uncle Norm's house and Christmas was at our house. And we go over to Uncle Norm's for Thanksgiving. I don't know why, it seemed to be on a Sunday, but that's a Thursday. Anyway, whatever it was. And he'd get up from the dinner table when he was done, stretch out on the only couch there was, and put on like 60 minutes. You know, we're kids. Who wants to watch 60 minutes, you know? And then he would take off the whole couch. We all be sitting on the floor where we could, and then he'd fall asleep with the remote control in his hand. So we couldn't change the remote control. So that's, everyone has an Uncle Norm, don't they? I mean, Uncle Norm or Aunt Milda or, you know, cousin Jeffrey, whatever it is. You all got one. So yeah, that's not even possible if you don't have the strong sense of me first. That's not possible. Okay. And there's different levels. Okay, so Mahayana Masters are, yeah.
So I'm assuming that Lama Zopa's karma puts him in this situation where people serve him and he is surrounded by other monks and all this, right? And
Right.
And sometimes I'm like, all right, so what if Lama Zopa were in this situation with me right now? And, you know, it's been a while since I've been served by people. It's been a while since someone brought me rice. And it's been like, then I go, am I in those situations, of course, due to my karma?
Right.
And then I question myself, could I do mantras all day long and have somebody follow me around a stupa? And like, could I even be Lama Zopa, right?
Right.
And so I go, okay, so my karma brought me here out of a lot of choice of my own.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not getting on an airplane and flying to wherever he is and walking around stupas. Like, yeah. I'm not making that choice.
Right.
But a lot of times I go, okay, so I'm choosing my environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I still wonder, what would Lama Zopa do in this situation? Like, how do I handle thinking only about others in this situation? So, right? Environment and all that has to play a huge part in this too.
Right.
Well, because I believe if Lama Zopa walked in downtown Santa Cruz, he too could possibly be challenged if he experienced that every day. Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't think so, though. No. But he was challenged at one point in his development, for sure. He's just like us.
Right.
Yeah. Don't forget that. That's really important. He's just like us. It's like, Denise, it's like you're riding in a car with your son and he's completely irritated by the traffic, but you're not. It's the same traffic for both of you.
Right.
That's like Lama Zopa. So, that the spiritual practitioner, as we advance, you're not fussed, you're not fussed anymore like you were 3 years ago about things.
Yeah.
That's all. So it's just gradations, right? Does that make sense?
Yep.
So that's why it's a
path.
I
beat myself up a lot. Like, this is so far off from what Lama Zopa would be doing in this situation.
Right.
And then I try to analyze, like,
well, what?
All
So I think the way to remember also is Rinpoche is that way mainly because of his wisdom. Wisdom meaning how he sees things. So he sees things different than you and me. And as a result of seeing something different or differently, you respond differently. So you and your son are at you're at a David Copperfield show, right? The illusionist, right? And he makes the Statue of Liberty disappear. It's possible you and your son understand that or experience it differently, right? You might go, well, I know how he does this, and but I don't want to tell my son because I want to ruin it for him. But right? Well, as we develop wisdom, that's how we will see things. So the
that's
opposite of wisdom is ignorance. And so the way we see everything is wrong. It's not, when I say wrong, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just is not the way it appears. So Rinpoche or His Holiness, Dalai Lama, and these other great beings, depending on their level, they might not be Buddhas or they might be Buddhas. That's not the issue. They see reality. The Buddha, the only difference between Buddha and a first level Bodhisattva, of which there's 10 levels of Bodhisattvas, the first level Bodhisattva sees reality without concept. He or she has a direct experience. And up to that point, he or she is having a conceptual experience. So they're still having profound views of reality. But it isn't until they enter the first Bodhisattva path that it's seen completely experientially, without concept, bare.
where
So
does
then
relative reality come in?
What's that?
Where does relative reality come in?
It's understanding relative reality as well. It's just that you will understand understanding absolute reality is the key to understanding relative reality. But that's a big question right now. So the point is that at that point you begin to see things differently, right? As they really are.
Yeah.
So you can't go back.
Right.
I mean, you can't go like, oh, I wish I could not understand how David Copperfield makes the Statue of Liberty. You can't unknow it. You can't unknow it. It's a kind of a curse because your innocence then, is lost, right? So, and then then the other thing is that what's appearing in front of you, in front of us, is dependent on karma. But for Lama Zopa Rinpoche to have people bringing him rice and driving him, and we have to check if his ego's all involved in that, right? If it's an ego trip for him, which does happen to people, power, recognition, fame. So we have to be a bit judgmental. Can't give up our judgment, and look to see if that is playing into this. Now, so if you check, and there's no way you would know, but it's not like Rinpoche.
Well, it seems like so let's say there's a young investor who has a chauffeur, and he has it so he can say he drives around in this car and somebody else drives him. Yeah. And then you have Lama Zopa, who I imagine is in a vehicle chosen because it does less harm to most beings than any other vehicle he would have chosen. Right. And that he allows somebody to be his chauffeur, to be in service of another, to create altruistic, positive karma. Like I anticipate the same, somebody driving somebody in a car has two completely different creations of karma and intentions and motivation.
Yes. Yeah, and why they're even in the car. Because Lama's always thinking, oh, not what a great car I get to ride around in, but let's get to this place to help others. Otherwise he won't go.
On the way, right?
Otherwise he won't go.
Right.
And just this quick little story is one evening we were waiting for him at the Dharma Center here in Santa Cruz, Atlanta Medicine Buddha. And it had been raining, and we're waiting for him to come teach. He was scheduled to teach at 7 o'clock, and we're waiting, and it's getting later and later, which is not unusual. Often he runs late, and it's like 7:30, and they call us and say, well, we're trying to get there, we're leaving soon. And then 8 o'clock, finally get a call. Rinpoche's decided not to come because we can't get out of the driveway without squishing all the worms that came out after the rain. killing all the worms. So it's more beneficial not to kill the worms and not give a teaching than to kill all the worms and give a teaching. Okay? Okay, now, if we go back to this thing, everyone okay? Do you need a break? Let's see what time it is. We have about a half hour left. Do you want to need a little break?
I had a question though.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said, I'm trying to weave this into other things that I've been learning. And one of the center's other teachers, Miffy, was talking about shame and embarrassment being virtuous.
Right.
Even though they are uncomfortable, that they serve to restrain negative behaviors.
That's true.
I see this kind of, maybe this is a Western or just an American kind of thing, that we don't want to sit with our uncomfortable emotions. And when we share something, people will say, oh, well, you can't change that. So just, self-compassion. But I think that's done like in a self-cherishing kind of way.
Yes.
And it goes back to that when you say, stop focusing on the patches or the fixes. Like we can't go back and change something that we did, but this kind of like helps us get rid of that negative emotion. And, we call it self-compassion, and it kind of fixes that. But I'm guessing that a spiritual teacher would want you to linger with that a little longer, and that the self-compassion would not be like the kind of like the magic eraser of, to get rid of that feeling, but to actually stew in that a bit, to actually be able to understand what you did and restrain that behavior. But then that comes back to that me, like it's the ego that needs the restraining. Is that, I was just wondering what you think of that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of good points in there. So we have to, okay. So let's see if I can unpack that without too much complication. Well, first of all, the thing to cover first is that we don't get rid of the self-cherishing for a long time. So we will practice the spiritual path with self-cherishing. We will. So what we're doing is, since it's a path, is we're getting better and better at it and reducing the self-cherishing. Now, the self-cherishing is reduced through wisdom, not some intellectual thing. It's so while maybe I started my spiritual journey this lifetime by really being really interested in meditation, right? And I was really even good at it, and that was a good level of, and that, but it was with a lot of self-cherishing, right? I want to meditate, I want to be a meditator, I want to feel good, that, right? So in that beginning stage, that was fine. But eventually it's going to come and create pain and suffering for you. And then when you have the pain and suffering, then you start thinking, oh, I need to, that's coming from my grasping to meditate, right? So then I work on that. It's a slightly more subtle level of self-cherishing, right? And then, I'm even to the point where, oh, I didn't get my meditation done today. I'm a mess, like that. And then you go, oh wow, that's even a subtle level of self-cherishing. Now I want to work on that one. So my point is that self-cherishing is unfortunately or fortunately, it is part of what motivates us on the path. Eventually, as we develop the wisdom, it becomes more and more reduced. So it's not a black and white. That's one thing I want to really make clear. But throughout our journey and our practice and our work, we need to focus on our level of self-cherishing. And I see many Dharma students, monks and nuns as well, their self-cherishing is so intense on a certain spiritual aspect that they really create a problem for themselves and others. Okay, they need to look at that, but that's not where they're at, or we need to look at that. That's not where we're at. So it depends on where one's at, right? It's totally individual. So the idea is, wherever we're at, our goal is to eventually have no self-cherishing, no self-focus. But it's not an either or. It's a gradual process. About shame and embarrassment, I'm glad you brought those up, because they are often used in Western psychology and therapy and practice, Western therapy, I guess you say. self-help. It's a bit of a dangerous one, because in Buddhist psychology, one outline in Buddhist psychology are what's referred to as the 51 the 51 mental factors. And these are things like the 6 root afflictions, the 20 secondary afflictions, so that's 26, the 5 omnipresent mental factors, which is 26 and 31, the 5, I can't remember what the title is, 5, another 5 that are used, that are almost always present, 31, 36, how many that makes, 36, the 11 virtuous minds, you know. So in the 11, so that's we're getting to 51. Oh, and then the four neutral ones. I don't know if is that 51. Did I do 51 just like that?
That was 51.
Is, huh?
That's 51.
Hey, pretty good, huh? Do you want to know what each one of them are? I don't mean to show off. I'm just teasing. So I don't know if I know each one, but Barbara, what I'm trying to say is, of the 11 virtuous mental factors, one of them is embarrassment, and one of them is shame. Now, we tend not to call them that anymore because the way those words have been weighted down in Western psychology. So I think embarrassment, I think, is, maybe shame is conscientiousness. And embarrassment, I think, I haven't looked. Embarrassment is like social awareness, social mores. So one has to do shame in that word in Buddhist, again, not to use that word in Buddha in these terms because it's so weighted, but shame, what it meant was you feel a sense of inner disappointment for the way you behaved or spoke. And embarrassment is you did something socially or externally or to others that you feel embarrassed by or feel bad about. So that's a bit like a sociopath doesn't have embarrassment. Probably a psychopath doesn't have shame or embarrassment. I'm making that up, by the way, but just to give it to give it some flavor. So right. So a social awareness is a positive a virtuous mental factor. And a lack of contrition inside of us is not a lack of it would be a negative, it would be an afflictive mind. But to have it is a virtuous mind, right? You care about what you think. But now why? It's again because of your spiritual practice. And we don't stay stuck on it. And this is the thing that happens in Western culture, is we feel a sense of shame. It's like for years and years and years, then you got to go to therapy because you feel shame for having, whatever, right? Or you didn't feel, but people made you feel shame, like your parents. You feel less than. So that dwelling is a negative. That's negative. That's a negative mind. That's an affliction. Because all of us have a bad thought or, these things that are internal, right? The laziness, which is also negative, secondary negative affliction, is not doing anything about it. A lot of times shame has people just don't do anything about it. They just stick in it. They stick in it. Okay. Anyway, that gets a bit, that gets sensitive because those are long for some people in their families or in the relationships. It got really hammered into them so that it was hard to avoid feeling shame. I understand that. And low self-worth and those things. But it's like low self-worth versus humility. They're not the same thing necessarily. In fact, Lama Yeshe used to say quite often, you need ego strength to practice this path. You need and in Tantra practice, we talk about divine pride. So it's just a question of how it's being used and what its focus is, whether shame and embarrassment are virtuous or non-virtuous. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. Okay, so Mahayana Master, we're not getting very far. Well, we are getting far. Okay, I've covered this, I think, already. So Mahayana Master. So just say the taking refuge from a particular teacher is not necessarily the practice or the role of a Mahayana Master, because that taking refuge is the entry to the Buddhist path. But developing Bodhichitta, when you really from your heart say, no, this Bodhichitta thing is really important. That's what I want to focus on in my spiritual practice, in my spiritual path. So the Bodhichitta motivation is the entrance to the Mahayana way. And we have many friends who are devout and sincere practitioners of Buddhism, but they're not Mahayanas, right? Their interest is naturally in developing their minds to the point of being free from their problems. But the motivation isn't for the welfare of others. They may have compassion. They do have compassion. They're kind, they'll develop kindness, but that's different than bodhicitta. So the aspiring, as I've already said, is to become a Buddha, to benefit others as much as possible. The engaging is then when you actually commit to the vows that are the Bodhisattva vows, okay, the Bodhichitta vows. Okay, and then the person is training intensively in the methods and wisdom that bring enlightenment, not just liberation, and not just a higher rebirth, and not just feeling good. So you can ask your friends who are into mindfulness meditation why they do it, and then you'll know. Okay. I know I'm a bit too critical, sorry. So the idea is that to train intensely in the methods and wisdom that bring enlightenment, well, that's very lofty. But then you can also, okay, I'm training to do my best to help others as much as I can. That's good enough, right? That's good enough. You know, we're not high bodhisattvas, but our ultimate goal is to develop method and wisdom that bring enlightenment to ourselves and others. Okay? So engaging bodhicitta, you take the bodhisattva vows, and when you want to take these bodhisattva vows, you take them in the presence of a spiritual mentor who will teach them the Mahayana way. If that's not possible, you can also take the ceremony in the presence of statues, paintings, and even visualize them as present. All the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, your teacher is present in front of you in the space in front of you. The reason I'm mentioning this is that it's showing that your commitment, you really just want the vows. And if you don't have a teacher around you, a Mahayana Master is giving it to you, that you can still take them. And this would be from a strong commitment in your heart.
What's the difference with bodhicitta vows and lay vows?
Say it again.
What's the difference in bodhicitta vows and lay vows?
Yeah, so lay vows, it's a good question. Lay vows are directed toward a person wanting to get out of samsara because it sucks. No sense of for the welfare of others. You can take lay vows for that reason. You can take lay vows for that reason, of course. But when they're given, typically when they're given, they're not with the Mahayana motivation. However, you take them from a Mahayana master. I mean, that's an interesting question, because I wonder when I took the lay vows way back when I took them from Lama Yeshe, probably he gave them with bodhicitta motivation. But that's not required, so to speak. So even, so lay vows and pratimoksha vows, which are the monks, a different level of vows, going from lay vows all the way up to fully ordained monks and nuns, are all for your own liberation. No thought of attaining enlightenment for the welfare of others. You could take them for that reason, but that's an add-on, right? That's not how they were designed. They were designed for what's called, they're called individual liberation vows. Okay. Yeah. When you take the Bodhisattva vows, it's interesting, they usurp the lay vows. It's possible, like one of the lay vows is not to engage in killing, right? It's not engage in killing, not engage in stealing, not engage in lying, not engaging in sexual misconduct, and not engage in intoxicants or becoming intoxicated. So in the Bodhisattva vows, it's very, now if you look at those 5 vows I just mentioned, they're all actions, aren't they? Well, lying is a verbal action, yeah. They're all actions. So in the Bodhisattva vows are not about, they have to do with motivation. So in fact, if you were a Bodhisattva, if you had Bodhichitta, and an occurrence came up where it was more beneficial to kill, I'm being extreme because that always gets people thinking, you break your Bodhisattva vow if you don't kill. But try killing someday with Bodhichitta. You know, they always refer, there's a couple stories of Bodhisattvas having had to kill in order to save a lot of people and to protect the karma of the person they killed. So you see, it's not with self-motivation, it's impossible, it's with bodhicitta motivation. It's the motivation to enlighten all living beings. Therefore, I might need to kill, or I might need to lie, or I might need to steal. I might need to engage in sexual misconduct. I might need to, what was the other one? Lie? What did I say? Anyway, become intoxicated. Okay, but we don't, I'm telling you that because I'm telling you that for the deepen the understanding, but don't trust anyone that does it and says they're doing it with bodhicitta, because it may happen, but if you see it happening with bodhisattva, it's probably not happening publicly. It's probably not happening for anybody that would see it. Or it's just, I don't know. I'm trying to think if I have seen a bodhisattva engage in one of them. You know, it's a little bit like they tell the story of Buddha as a bodhisattva before he became enlightened, and he was on a ship, and you know, through his clairvoyance, he saw that the captain of the ship was going to intentionally sink the ship and kill 500 people, and he was doing it out of anger, and you know, and that Buddha through his clairvoyance could see that this ship captain was going to go straight to the hell realms as a result of this. And so there was no benefit. He could see there's no benefit to allow the captain to do that. And at the same time, the bodhisattva, the Buddha had the facility to intervene. And so because of the karmic situation, he did kill that captain. Now people always go, why didn't the bodhisattvas kill Hitler? And why did they kill? It's because it's not going to produce the benefit they think. Too small of a frame of time. Also, you can't just go around doing it because if there's no karma to do it. That ship captain had the karma to have that relationship with the Bodhisattva Shakyamuni, the Bodhisattva. But generally, you know, you can't just go kill. Maybe they did kill Hitler. Who knows? He was killed later on. But the point is, it doesn't change. You know, just killing someone doesn't change the karma. I mean, the karma of the people are to be for genocide or something. It's going to happen regardless. So it's much more complex at this point. So I would not trust anybody who says they're breaking those vows with bodhicitta, or it's what's best for really, Denise really needed a good slap in the face. So I did it for her benefit. I would be very suspicious, right? Even teachers today, there's spiritual teachers say, well, I was wrathful with that student because he needed it. I just don't know. I mean, I'd be suspicious. Better to be suspicious.
So
But
did
but
I
it
get it? Did
Huh?
I understand correctly that all the vows up to a bodhicitta vow are action based, and bodhicitta vow goes motivation based?
Well, no, there's bodhisattva vows that are also action based. There are root vows, and then there's branch vows. Yeah, but the intent is motivation. Yes, intent is so in the Hinayana approach. In the early stages of our practice, what we're trying to do is control our environment, right? So we say don't drink, but so that means don't go into bars, right? If you're trying to stop drinking, don't go in bars. It's as simple as that. But that doesn't necessarily get rid of the alcoholic mind, does it? But it's sure better than going in and drinking again. To get rid of the alcoholic mind, you have to, well, in the Buddhist context, you have to meditate on wisdom and eliminate it and purify that mind and get rid of that afflicted mind. But in a metaphorical sense, in a more metaphor, like we don't have much control over our minds. So there's all these different vows you take, like ethics. The main practice of ethics or morality is to help the mind stay controlled. Yes, it's putting walls around it. Yes. But that's what we need in the beginning stages or early stages. Eventually, we open ourselves up more to the problems, as Barbara was talking about that earlier. Would a teacher let you stew in that? Yeah, if you're at the level where it's more where you can purify those minds, yeah, it's better to stew or confront. But if at a lower level, don't put yourself in a position that those negative minds will come up as much as possible. So if you always get angry when Uncle Norm is over, and you always end up yelling at him, don't hang around with Uncle Norm. That's the Theravada, that's the Hinayana approach. Those are the vows of liberation. Now, if you're thinking, oh, my getting angry at Uncle Norm is really more about my internal problem, and I want to get rid of that, then you go over to Uncle Norm's and you hang out and you watch that when you deal with the mind that's arising. That's the Mahayana. Well, it's not only Mahayana, but that's more of a Mahayana approach. Okay, it's just different. Those are different techniques.
Thank you.
But
And you can become a monk or nun without taking bodhicitta vows?
Yeah, they're nothing to do with Bodhichitta vows.
Wow.
They're low. They're more preliminary. They're fundamental vows. So they were designed when Buddha developed the monastic community. The monastic community was designed to have vows to protect them and keep them focused on attaining liberation, not enlightenment.
Which is why we don't trust just anybody wearing robes to be our teacher.
Well,
or our guru.
It depends what they're teaching, and well, yeah, but we don't do that with anybody.
For a guru. Yeah. This goes back to the beginning class that you taught us.
Yeah.
In this class.
So these Mahayana Masters. Oh gosh, I didn't get through. I'm going to say something to that by going forward in the slides. Okay.
Great.
So these Mahayana Masters can, what defines them is they can lead a disciple along the complete path to enlightenment, not just liberation. And then we got Tantric Masters. So I'm going to here. So what's left for us? Mahayana Masters, Tantric Masters, and root gurus. Okay, they're not synonymous. And that's what you were just bringing up about root gurus. So better just to have teachers. So Mahayana Tantra. I'm not sure I'm going to get through these. Let's see. So Tantra is our Mahayana disciples Mahayana disciples traverse the path to enlightenment by either what's called the sutra or sutrayana, or the tantras, the tantrayana. Sutrayana are the basic teachings, like in the six perfections and other positive qualities, like developing ethical self-discipline, developing concentration, developing compassion, developing bodhichitta, understanding of emptiness, reality. Okay, that's the sutra path, and those are the sutra just means all the teachings, the scriptures. Now tantra is more like we're in a hurry. I put hurry in quotes because the hurry is based upon being unbearable to stand the suffering of others. Now, most of us people that I know who are in the tantra and they say it's a quick path, it's hurry, it seems to me they're more into the hurry for themselves. Okay, so not the right motivation. So these are advanced methods, and one does not engage in the tantric practices without a foundation in the sutra practices. This is something, again, developing in the West. This idea is, oh, I'm not into the sutra stuff. I'm done with Lam Rim, and I don't need to study, the six perfections. I don't need to, I'm just practicing tantra. Complete misunderstanding. I mean, it could be one or two unusual people based on earlier previous lives karma. It's true. I shouldn't be so blanketly negative, but generally speaking, those beings are very rare, and they could just enter the tantra, just practice tantra because of their past karma. It's more efficient and more rapid. You're using your imagination to transform one's self-image to the model of a Buddha figure or Buddha image. Okay. Really tantra is usually referred to as the resultant path because you focus on the result as the cause itself. And this is not a class on tantra, so I'm not going to go into all that. But all Tibetan traditions combine sutra and tantra. Okay. Tantric masters. So what makes someone a tantric master is he is or she is someone who provides the empowerment or initiation into a Buddha figure, a Buddha ideal, a figure. Okay, practice. There are 4 tantra classes. The Nyingma tradition speaks of 6. That's just a detail. Don't worry about it. In the Tibetan tradition, we have the Nyingma, Kargyu, Gelug, and Shakya. So these, Shakya, Gelug, Shakya, Kargyu, Gelug speak of 4 tantra classes, and Nyingma speak of 6. But the 2 extra they have are included or subsumed within the 4 of the other 3 Tibetan schools. So it's there's no conflict. General sense, a tantric master confers initiation from any of these 4 classes of tantra. Initiation is the key word here. However, some say it's only the person who confers a tantric vow. So now we got the lay pratimoksha and pratimoksha vows. Now we have bodhisattva vows we talked about briefly. And then we got a third set of vows, which are the tantric vows. Okay, there's no other vows besides these 3. So when you take an empowerment, the master will confer on you a set of vows that you have to stick to in order to receive that empowerment. And these vows apply, I mentioned there's 4 levels of tantra, generally speaking, to the two highest levels. But either way, when you're in a room or in an audience with a master who's giving you an empowerment, which is, we say, a tantric initiation, everything changes. That's a level that is very, very sacred, and it's secret, actually. A lot of these teachings typically were secret. You can't even you can't talk about what the vows are, for example, because if you need to ask, you're not ready. Right? Because this is sort of like, I'm giving my life up. I got to attain enlightenment quickly because I don't care what happens. This is too dire of a situation. And so it doesn't matter what the vows are. Now, these are promises on how they will see and treat their master. So part of it is Tantric Master. Part of the vows is you have to see him or her differently now. This does not apply to your meditation teacher. It does not apply to the teachers teaching you the Mahayana scriptures. It does not apply to someone who's teaching you a ritual like water bowl offerings. It does not apply. So, but there is a promise at this level, part of the vows, or how you see this Tantric Master. And so I want to just inject here that we hear a lot about people say, you have to see your guru as a Buddha, right? We started that in the very first class. And that's been misunderstood. And that's what's very dangerous for us Westerners. I will say, you do have to see your Tantric Master as a Buddha. And generally speaking, that statement generally flows from the practice of Tantra. We'll talk about seeing all our teachers as a Buddha, of course, but you're required to with a Tantric Master. Okay. So you have to, as I mentioned, you have to, one is seeing one. Now, what that means, seeing one's Tantric Master as a Buddha. I don't want you to, if you haven't heard this idea, I don't want you to make assumptions about what that means. Okay. Just go, okay, Karuna will explain later. And I've explained a little bit before. And I say here, this idea, sorry about my language, these ideas cause the most confusion for Western students. So they'll have a teacher, and maybe that teacher acts unconventionally or acts rudely or inappropriately. And you have some doubts about that. And then your fellow students say, oh, whoa, hang on, he's a Buddha. Very dangerous idea. He might be a Buddha. I'm not saying he is or isn't, but just saying that's quite dangerous. And we need to again deconstruct that and what it really means. This is where widespread tantric practice of guru. Oh, so we have this, just maybe for people know, when all four traditions, the Tibetan traditions, have different kinds of guru yogas or guru practices, and that practice is directly linked with seeing your guru as a Buddha. Okay, that's the relationship with that practice. This idea can apply to those who confer initiation. But it can also apply to, you may have gotten initiation or empowerment, let's say from the Dalai Lama, who was gives Kala Chakra had been quite openly. And then you want to do the practice, you want to engage in the retreat. And so you'll have an opportunity maybe to receive the commentary to the practice from another Lama. But because he's a Tantric Master, he's acting on behalf of your Tantric Master, then you would attempt and agree that even to see that person giving you commentary also as a Buddha. Again, I'm not going to explain what that means right now. It's a different category. It's a different level. It's a different class. So they may provide initiations and empowerments. They may also give you permissions. These are called jainangs, permissions to do certain parts of the practice or different practices. They may confer on you mantras, that you need to do for the practice or for some other practice. They may provide oral transmissions for the appropriate text. So sometimes to read the text or the commentaries and things like that, you need to receive permission to look at those texts. And those are called lungs, where the Lama will recite the text for you so you hear it once, usually in Tibetan. And then discourses on the subtle practices or the nuances of those advanced tantric practices. I think we're almost done, so hang in there. Tantric masters are spiritual mentors who empower, boost, refuel, energize, and give directive thrusts to our highest tantra inner space journeys. This is Alex Berzin's quote. As perpetual sources of inspiration, they keep our engines running. Moreover, through continuing supervision and instruction, our Tantric Masters provide ground control and dependable guidance systems to reach our goals accurately and safely. They may already be our Mahayana Masters. So you may have your master and then he's going to give you an initiation. Or they may be other spiritual teachers with whom we have rare contact, like the Dalai Lama, for example. Okay. So these tantra is advanced methods. They supplement the sutra practice, more efficient and more rapid. Now, just to finish up, the last category is root guru. A root guru is really, really hard to meet. It's not just meeting, it's the development of the relationship. By the way, in the Tantric Masters, typically, Tantric teacher would not take on a student without checking him or her out for about 12 years. So this is quite a serious thing. So it's not just frivolous. It is beyond frivolous. It's very serious. So it's a big, and the disciple checks out the teacher for 12 years. So root gurus are discussed primarily in context of highest yoga tantra. So it's not only, but typically, if you're not, particularly if you're practicing this relationship with a root guru, it's probably going to be in the context of your tantric practices. It is here we attain the flash insights through their inspiration in the ceremonies of tantric empowerment and so on. So there are certain things when a person develops a deep relationship, a true root guru relationship, there is an exchange that happens on a very deep level. Alex is calling these flash insights. The root guru is an entirely new concept for us Westerners. Spiritual mentors who turn disciples' hearts and minds most ardently to the Buddhist path. That's what a root guru will be. The strongest sources of inspiration. Sustain the disciples throughout their spiritual journey, even from life to life. Okay. The relationship with the root guru acts as the root of all your attainments. It may not be the first teacher you meet, nor give the most Dharma teachings to you, or meditation advice, or ritual training. Those are other teachers. That might be your Mahayana master. Nor may not have taken refuge or liberation vows from that person. Most come from their Tantric masters. Okay. So that's a lot, but thank you for letting me. I think I wanted to get the content out. I hope I didn't lose you, but I really felt a commitment to give you the content so that you could, think about it and reflect on it. You have it now, if you hadn't received it before, and you'll receive it again and again and again, because you're going to all of a sudden, you go, yeah, I get it. Oh, wait, what's happening with this person? What am I doing here? So that's how it should be. It's not like, oh, now you got it, and, you understand it, or this happens, the understanding and the depth of the relationship with each of these different levels of teachers might change. The depth might get deeper. So yeah. I went 5 minutes over, sorry. Any last minute comments? You don't have to, but if I can help. Barbara, how'd you do? Was that too much?
No, it was good.
Okay, thank you. Great.
It was
Great.
very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Denise, Shayla?
My mind
Huh?
melted, but that's okay.
Good.
Good for me to think about.
Yeah. Good.
It's a lot of information, but it's clear.
Good. Well, we can build on it. So thank you, Denise. So next week, we will go a little more traditional and well, this was kind of getting more toward the traditional. So because I want to cover the content, and I hope to do it not in a boring way, but I do want you to receive, like, what are the qualifications of a teacher, for example? What are the qualifications of a student? So we don't know these things because we don't receive it generally in our education or even in our other religious study. So it's good to get the information. So we're going to go into a couple of those things and just cover the traditional stuff without being boring. Okay, so at this point, we dedicate all the energy that we created together, which is referred to as merit, because it's good karma that leads to an awakened mind, and dedicate this merit for one thing, that we have an indestructible, pure relationship with a true Mahayana Master, Tantric Master, Root Guru. It would be blessed to have it, because it's very, very rare, but it happens through causes and conditions. So the cause is making strong petitions to have Buddha manifest for you. And if you make strong petitions, that creates some of the causes. And from Buddha's, the omniscient mind side, the only thought, not even thought, but the only natural thing is to benefit others. And he, as Shakyamuni Buddha, when passing away, or before passing away, said, don't worry, I'll come back and manifest through your gurus. So we have a chance to get teachings directly from Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, or other Buddhas. So dedicated in this way, that we're on this journey for the benefit of awakening all the countless beings who won't even get a chance for maybe billions, zillions, trillions, quintillion years. It's too long. Okay, thank you.
See everybody.